You're listening to dialectradio.co.uk.
Well, I'm joined on the line now by Michael Tyler. Michael runs his blog, his own personal blog. It's at michaeltyler.co.uk. But Michael's done something that our useless mainstream press in London just have not been bothered to do, which is to, amongst many other things, compile a list of some of the dead bankers, that is to say, serious money types from the City of London and elsewhere, Wall Street, many other places around the world where there's big financial centres. And many of them have been suicides, but as Michael has documented, actually it looks like quite a lot of them might have been murdered, and there's not really been any kind of proper investigation into this. Anyway, Michael, welcome to Dialect. Let's just start by, how many bankers have you got on your list now?
Well, in all, I think there's about 80 dead bankers listed down there on the when I last looked.
I mean, are there any patterns if you're going through the list? I mean, a lot of these people, of course, are not known. They really wouldn't be known to anyone. I mean, bankers tend to turn up at the job. They're fairly anonymous. They take great pay amounts of pay home. But in the wider society, certainly in the public domain, and they don't have any kind of celebrity status or any kind of knowledge. The public doesn't know who they are.
No, well, they're just there to make money, aren't they? I mean, the idea of the investment banking arm is just, it's to use the retail banking arm as a kind of a proxy for its money making. Really, the retail. So when we talk about bankers, we're not talking about the people sitting behind the branch in Barclays on the high street. We're talking people that usually sit behind a terminal, looking at Bloomberg terminal. Or, they're getting, they're basically at the top end information-wise in the company, or certainly moving towards there. So they're holding the company philosophy, and that philosophy is one where we're gonna use you, and we're gonna rape you and take what we can, in the most, I suppose, in the most ruthless fashion. If you're talking about the really, like the JP Morgans, who said, there's a good reason to do something, and then there's the real reason to do something, and that's, that's the idea is to, just to, I suppose, to be as ruthless and as lizard-like as they possibly can.
Hey, that's a provocative term to use. But look, I mean, what you've done by pulling all these, nearly 80 dead bankers, mostly suicides, together and documenting it, what made you decide to start that list?
When society teaches you from a very young age that you're going to be someone that has a responsibility, you're taught that even from a young age where you don't really have a responsibility, but as a child, it's instilled into you that your actions have repercussions. So as you grow older and older, I suppose that. But these bankers they turn that on its head. It's like they've gone back to like almost below a child, where they're any kind of the responsibility has been removed from them. They're in essence kind of like, it's like power without responsibility. I guess that they just. So I suppose that the society hadn't punished them at all, really.
No, I mean, it does certainly seems they're above the law. I mean, are there any patterns that emerge through that list of 80?
The only pattern is that they weren't investigated. I mean, I suppose read all of them in the face of overwhelmingly suspicious evidence. Just, for example, the guy who shot himself with a nail gun. I think it was in a bath. He actually shot himself with a nail gun in a bath, which seems like as a policeman, you might, in terms of an investigation, I think they put it as an unexplained death. But some of the on situ, which were from the bulletins that came from the papers, I'd guess within a fairly short time frame, given the information about the case, they weren't like. It was always unexplained death. They never. It wasn't. It could have been much more. If they were honest, if I went there and said this guy's come into the bathroom and shot himself with a nail gun, I'd say that was kind of, and some of them are, a lot of them are, I'd say, just much more suspicious.
I mean, you would expect that was murder, unless there was some very strong evidence that it was suicide. You certainly wouldn't presume it was suicide, but that's what's happened with many of these. And are there any main countries, which part of the world is this mainly going on, these unexplained banker deaths?
Well, it would be the UK and America primarily.
Well, that's the belly of the beast.
And a lot of them, yeah. I mean, what you're looking at is, I suppose, Europe as well. A lot of them are UBS bankers. There's 3 top banks that top the list. I did a little list, and can you guess what 3?
Oh dear, that's a bit awkward. But I'm going to guess Goldman Sachs. I'll guess JP Morgan. I'll guess UBS. You've just given me a bit of a steer on that. But anyway, how did I get on? You did 1 out of 3, so you're 30% there, 33%. So only the one that you told me, UBS.
No, it was JP Morgan.
Okay, so UBS isn't high up there. So anyway, which are the other top 3 with JP Morgan?
Well, JP Morgan's number 1, and that basically means that I think it was maybe 40% of 70 deaths with JP Morgan. So that's a fairly, as a breakdown, they're pretty expendable. Deutsche Bank, who obviously run the currency markets in Europe.
Well, also they've taken over, really. I mean, I spoke to a director last year of the Bundesbank, a former director, and he was looking at me with his sort of faraway eyes saying, well, I'm afraid the Bundesbank is being surpassed by Deutsche Bank, and I'm very worried about it because this is a private bank running the German markets and the Euro markets for their own private gain. And, he was looking kind of guilty as a German, saying, we've let this one slip away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Deutsche Bank is I think, they've managed to, they're not any different to any other. If you say JP Morgan and you say Deutsche Bank, I think Deutsche Bank don't have quite as much. They got done for doing the LIBOR rate, didn't they, a few years ago with Barclays and Deutsche? So they're not that clean, but I guess that people almost see them as like Germany's national bank now because they're so ingrained in they actually think it's because it's Deutsche Bank. Maybe they believe it's like the state bank. But
okay, and who's the third one?
I think it was we got JP Morgan, we got Deutsche. Goldman only had 2 executives on the list. They were, I think they weren't that. They were dodgy, but they were not certainly not the dodgiest. Let me have a look. I think it was UBS was number 3. It might have been UBS.
Oh, I didn't do so bad then, did I? 2 out of
3. Yeah, okay, we'll give you that.
Anyway, look, Michael, the reason we were chatting to you today, I'd love to know how many interviews, the press has phoned up and done with you, because you've done some absolutely amazing research here. No one else has bothered to do.
Mm-hmm. I like to think so, yeah. I like to keep it rolling on,
So have you had requests from Newsnight and other places around the world to go and tell everybody about this? I mean, you think in any sane world that there would be some massive scandal and an enormous great public inquiry into the death of... I mean, we're looking at JP Morgan. That's roughly 30 people, 40% of your list... and 70 or so bankers at JP Morgan. We're looking at a vast number of people dying in mysterious circumstances in one bank. You would have thought that this would be all over the newspapers and that there would be an enormous great public inquiry, arrests and all sorts going on. But, I'd like to know, how many interviews have you done on the topic?
Well, I've never done, apart from the one I did on your... for you last year, I think it was. I haven't no one's been particularly interested in it.
Oh, God. This just makes me so annoyed that you've got such an interesting, key subject. I mean, money is what makes the world go round. It's the one topic that everybody needs to understand now as we start to hit austerity, potentially another crash. A lot of people warning that there might be a proper crash this time, not a bailout of the banks, but a total collapse of the system. And yet nobody seems to be interested that the people who are supposed to be running that system are being bumped off at a rate of knots. But anyway, look, the problem is being really getting your michaeltyler.co.uk website out there and getting people to look at it, to take it seriously, to ask questions at the very least about these banker deaths. But I know that since Google brought in their new algorithm, I think it was announced in April and it was introduced probably July, August time sometime. You've seen a bit of a dip in the number of people finding your website.
Well, Tony, I used to live in China, and when I was in China, I wrote some how-to articles about just for expats and the best way to use the Chinese, to adapt to life in China. These did really well. I mean, I put them on some of the expat sites, and they did really, really well. They used to get like 40 to 70 hits a day, I guess. And people used to come along and read those. And the Dead Bankers thing was quite, that was still going on, and a few other pieces which are obviously of interest about. Just about current affairs and stuff, like the Chinese building the islands and all the rest of the political kind of stuff, east-west kind of stuff, and the machinations and whatever. So it was quite popular. It used to do quite well. It was in April this year, and I noticed that my stats dropped off quite heavily. And I suppose by heavily, I mean probably about 30 to 40 to... No, I think it was even more than that. I think it would probably be about 60%. I think they probably dropped off by about 60%. Not on all the same articles at the same time, but just during the course of that month, I think they just peeled off. And I think I'd say 60% would probably be a fair amount of what I actually lost.
I mean, Google was actually selling itself, and this is how it first came into the market in the 1990s. The idea was that they had the best spidering service, so they went out and every new website, as soon as Google discovered a new website, it would go in, it would grab all the pages. It also was very, very good at finding what you wanted on your search, based on your search. And now it seems from April on, their emphasis is no longer on that. It's on, is this mainstream press? And the thing that bothers me is that the great thing about the internet was you would get on a Google search what you were looking for. You wouldn't get what the mainstream press wanted to tell you. It now seems as if Google has gone away from that whole idea. They've actually, I suppose, reneged on what was their reason to be there, apparently, in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, they actually, when they bought the Deja News archives, I don't know if you've got any old Newsnet listeners on here, but it was obviously ARPANET, and it was to give them credibility with the techies. They brought up ARPANET on all the old Newsnet archives of many, many years back.
Hang on, this is this news groups you're talking about? I can remember those from years ago.
Yeah, that's right. And obviously they had all the lots of everybody. Well, I mean, it was obviously a big thing. So you had lots of. They bought the Deja News archives, and that was thousands and thousands of postings from, I suppose, the pre-internet celebrities like Serdar Argic, and I suppose you've got Speed Bump and Borsey and all the rest of the old hip crime, all these sort of characters who underwrote the internet, who were the forerunners of the internet, really. So when they bought that up, people thought, look, and it was kind of a good, everyone got the warm fuzzies for them. And you used to be able to search on Usenet, so it got a lot of that old crowd into the Google, and they thought, well, that's a great big, it was a nice kind of halo, and it was a warm glow for them. If you still believe that, then I think you need to just read how deeply the American government controls what Google number one, passes to the federal state in America, and number two, how much influence they have on what Google does potentially.
I mean, so someone that knows a reasonable amount about, you're a bit of a techie yourself. What's going on with this new algorithm that Google have? Then, I mean, how important is that as a change?
Well, it's not. What they've done is, because it's the money from the YouTube thing that I think it's ISIS how-to videos were getting click-throughs from corporate websites. So a video of like a beheading would be appearing next to SmithKline Beecham's toothpaste kind of thing. So a lot of the advertisers were like, we're hand in hand with radical Islam kind of thing, which was the preface or the mandate to go ahead and kind of just pull the rug out from anyone that they saw fit kind of thing.
This is this whole scandal of demonetisation. So people who are getting, even millions of hits on their videos will get actually no payment for it because Google refuses to run ads on them. That's
the deal, yeah. It's censorship. They're basically. I mean, I've got like a couple of people. Dave Rubin, he was a presenter, and he was someone that had he'd made his own career before he moved on to the new media, and he basically went on as a new way, like Trump tweets. He kind of got on there, and it was something that really worked for him. And he'd based, this is the extent of his income, I'd guess. So he found himself demonetized, and he's you can look him up. His name's Dave Rubin. He did a feature on Sky. Tucker Carlson did an interview on Sky with him, and he's basically just had his life removed. A person called Jacqueline Glenn, very, very popular YouTube, just a magazine. Again, her whole life just removed. I ran a website and it got bought by the BBC, and they just completely removed it. And these people, there's another story about Forbes again. Just completely remove it. If they don't like you, it's not the first time they've done it. Google have been doing this for a long, long time.
So Google, a lot of people don't realise YouTube is Google. So then when they bought YouTube up, this has been. Look, at the end of the day, Google have got this little strapline, haven't they? Don't be evil. I think that's supposed to be part of their reason of being there, and isn't it supposed to be something that the employees all say and think to themselves every day?
That's an interesting concept, isn't it? And it gives them the fuzzy glow, doesn't it? But that fuzzy glow, everybody would like to believe that someone is good. There's some good in the world.
Well, we all like to give people the benefit of the doubt, don't we?
I think we'd like to. I don't, Tony, because I think that that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I would like to think that initially, I would say people like Google, sure, they'd like to believe that they dropped that years ago anyway. Just the shareholders. I mean, the whole, like, if you think about the stock market and any privatized company, and then you think about the reality of who your customer is. If you're a privatized company, think about who the reality of who's your real customer, and then you go back to the market and say, don't be evil. It's not going to wash, is it? It's michaeltyler.co.uk, and it has been censored. They've knocked it down quite a lot. The censorship thing, again, they're just overstepping. They're using it as a kind of, as a mandate to go out. My site did how-to articles, and they've just removed it. And these other people like Dave Rubin just remove them. They're using it to censor innocent people.
And actually, you're one of the only people who's looking into one of the biggest stories in the world. So anyway, Michael, amazing and horrifying, really, to think that somebody like you should be, for your work, should be being demoted down to the third or whatever page in Google so people can't find you. Pretty damn sinister stuff. Anyway, thanks very much for joining us on Dialect again.
Thank you, Tony.
That's all for this week. Dialect's Bristol's first weekly MP3 podcast. You can download it to listen on your phone or in the car, or subscribe and listen the week before broadcast at dialectradio.co.uk. Thanks to our guests, that's Dave Coates, also Jane Hoskins and Adrian Galvin, and also to Mary Pike. And finally, Michael Tyler, you just heard there. Also, of course, studio engineer Dave Bazanko. Dialect's a Bristol Broadband Co-op production, catches on Bristol Community FM 93.2 every Tuesday at noon. And anyone can contribute. Contact us through the People's Republic of Stokes Croft. They're online at prsc.org.uk. And you can volunteer with us or for hundreds of opportunities elsewhere in Britain via the national volunteering website do-it.org. That was Dialect, and I'm Tony Gosling, wishing you a very good week. Thanks for listening. Till the same time next week, goodbye for now.